There's such an interesting phenomenon happening in the clinic these days, and I would say right across humanity. And this is this notion that what we did before doesn't work the same anymore. The types of relationships that maybe we've had in the past, maybe they're not really working as good as they could anymore. And that could be friendships, coworkers, intimate partnerships, partnerships of all kinds. That there's this wave that appears to be asking us to evolve at a fairly rapid rate. And it's not always really easy. So what I'm seeing in the clinic, we'll start there, is that people are really struggling with their bodies. They're struggling with symptoms. They're struggling with autoimmune diseases and everything else. And they are not really necessarily getting the answers with the conventional medicine route that they've typically maybe used in the past, where they've taken a medication, they've taken a prescription, or they've used a prescription cream or something like that, and the issue went away, or it went away temporarily. Whereas now, it doesn't seem to work in the same way. So my office is incredibly busy, and I know many other practitioners are really, really busy right now as well, because people are not getting the results that they're accustomed to getting in the past. And even in my clinic, I have seen that the last few years as well, that I've needed to pivot and I've needed to evolve very quickly to understand what's happening now in people's bodies, what's happening at the cellular level, what's happening at the genetic level. And I don't recall a time in my career this far where people's systems are evolving so rapidly, both on the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual levels, sometimes all at the same time. And people are confused of like, excuse me, people are confused about what's happening in their bodies, what's happening in their minds, what's happening in their hearts and their nervous systems especially. And I feel like a big part of what's going on right now is that because we're being asked to evolve really, really quickly, the body may or may not have enough resources to support that type of growth and evolution, to support that kind of change. So depending on what you've been doing with your health the last 4 or 5 years, and even the 4 or 5 years prior to that, that can have a huge impact on what you're feeling now. So even if you just started doing all the right things, eating well, having a good diet in general, exercising, meditation, yoga, breath work, and maybe you're months into that or weeks into that, or maybe you're a year or two into that, and you're still wondering, how come I'm having these health issues? I would say it's often because the body, depending on how you've treated yourself, and this isn't to guilt or shame anyone at all, so just keep that in mind. But the 10 years previous leading up to the last year or two right now, really, really important, because that is what dictates how much inner resourcing you actually have in your system to be able to apply to the growth and the development that you're in now. So if you want to build a house or you want to do a big landscaping project, do you have enough rock and foundation and stones, concrete, workers? Do you have the resources that you need to carry out the project that you want to carry out? So when I look at people's health, what is the storage of vitality that they have in their system? And I got to say, for so many people that I see, they're depleted. They're so depleted because they've been working maybe 2 jobs, 3 jobs, trying to make a living. I know life can be a little challenging right now with inflation and everything else. And although those are real things, let's not make them excuses, and let's use this as a more empowered position to take. Come from an empowered place in your system, because we often underestimate what we're actually truly capable of as humans. And whenever these challenges come up in our lives, whether it's health or finance or illness or any number of different things, relational dynamics, what that is always an opportunity for you to learn something new and to change something. And I'm a big fan of Dr. Zach Bush and many other doctors I've been following for years. And what Zach talks a lot about on different podcasts and mediums is that when there's something major going on in the body, you need to change something. Full stop. And I agree with that, because I've seen that in the clinic, that often we're hanging on to things that we refuse to look at or we don't want to address and we don't want to change. And our bodies are telling us over and over, and our bodies may have been telling us for years, you need to change this, you need to change this. And then when we don't, it keeps going. And then maybe the symptoms get a bit bigger, maybe the voice gets a bit louder in your body, and then it keeps saying you need to change something. and how much of the time we often don't because we're afraid of uncertainty. Maybe we're afraid of the unknown. And I've been there. I can speak from experience. There's so much in my life in the past, especially years ago, where fear dictated my daily living. And I don't think a lot of people knew that around me, but that was true. Fear, and especially fear of the unknown, fear of change. I didn't want to let go of certainty. I wanted to keep what I perceived as a false sense of safety and security, but it was all an illusion. And my body was telling me, Kevin, you need to address these things. You need to change these things. And eventually getting to a point of exhaustion, then I finally did, because I couldn't carry on anymore in the same way. And so a lot of the patients that I'm seeing, they're coming in, they don't know what they need to change, but they know they need something. And they're often looking for, remedies or herbal prescriptions or detoxes and things, as if that might actually solve everything that's going on for them. And in some cases, it does, to a point. I feel like I'm pretty good at what I do, and I get to put like herbal remedies together, custom protocols, custom formulas. So many people need help at the cellular level. I'm not negating that. There's so many toxins in our world and our environment that we're taking in. The physical body does often need more resource and support than what it did in the past. And the other thing that needs to be addressed that most practitioners I find are not necessarily leaving space for, or necessarily cultivating or asking about or getting curious about, is what are the changes that are actually needed in your life? And I'm not just talking about diet. I'm talking about relationships. I'm talking about work. I'm talking about career, mission, purpose. I'm talking about where you spend your spare time, who you spend your spare time with, and what are you doing? What is the content and the quality of those types of interactions? And is that leaching energy from your life, or is it adding energy to your life? And are you helping add and spark and activate others in your life in a beautiful, healthy way? Or are you possibly draining life force from those around you? And these can be confronting questions sometimes, but we need to take an inventory at some point, especially when the body's talking to you. My body talks to me very clearly, and there's been plenty of times I didn't listen until I got strong enough, and then I had to, either because I get sick or I get exhausted or I feel an immense amount of physical pain in my body. That's usually when I know I need to address something or shift something or let go. And maybe it's letting go of the need to know or the need to control a particular outcome. And that is actually blocking me to the next phase. And so I think this gets overlooked so much when it comes to health, especially with what we're seeing right now. And when you get a health issue going on in somebody's body, it can be scary. And we often want to increase control. We feel like we might be out of control. And so we need to actually up the game of how much we're controlling in our environment. And sometimes that can be helpful. And a lot of times it's actually the opposite. We need to soften. We need to slow down and let go of grasping at whatever it is we're grasping, or holding on to something that we are refusing to let go of. And our bodies are speaking loudly and more now than ever. And in our society here in Western culture, it seems like so many have not been taught how to listen to their bodies. We've actually been taught the opposite: how to override, how to bypass, how to suppress symptoms, thoughts, emotions, ideas, creativity, sensuality. All of those things have been largely suppressed. Of course, it's going to lead to an issue in the body. How can it not? The body wants to express. It wants to express its creativity, its health, its networking, its communication, its community. So when we suppress, we start isolating aspects of ourselves. We start isolating aspects of our bodies. And the thoughts and the different ideas that you may have, even things that you want to create in the world, you can only stuff that or suppress that for so long before it starts to become an issue in your body, because your body cannot process it. It has to hold it and hold it and hold it. And then sometimes we wonder why we're feeling an illness or pain or soreness, or some kind of dysfunction is happening with our health. And then we're confused by that, when really it's maybe been years and years and years of overriding and suppressing and bypassing the truth of what's inside you. And maybe that you have not communicated with your spouse or your partner or a business colleague or coworkers or friends or family, parents, siblings, children. There's so much unexpressed energy in the people that I meet in the clinic. And again, this is not to blame or shame. It's just what I've noticed. And I feel like I'm noticing it because I did that. And how many other practitioners are actually doing that right now too? Doesn't mean we can't give good advice. We don't have to heal everything in ourselves 100%. And I would say we do need to address the things in our own systems as much as possible. And I feel like it's always been my responsibility as a practitioner to continue to up level, to continue to grow and learn continuously. Otherwise, I would get stifled in my work. Then people I would meet, I wouldn't be able to help in the same way if I hadn't addressed those issues in my body and at least started the process. Not always in a place of mastery because I'm very, very human, but in my humanness, when I'm in the clinic room, when I'm leading retreats, when I'm guiding big events, I am feeling my humanity. And I'm also feeling the places of stability and in some places in my system of layers of mastery that I've cultivated over long periods of time, and it doesn't show up overnight. And this is what I'm also seeing with guides and practitioners and coaches, both ones that come to need support, ones that I get supported by, that we all need to be doing our work, especially now. And if you're not walking your talk when it comes to guiding and being a practitioner these days, you'll often feel symptoms really, really quickly because we can't really get away with that anymore, which is really good, but it also holds us very accountable to taking radical self-responsibility for all of our experiences. If we're not getting the outcomes that we want in the clinic, there is self-responsibility to take as a practitioner. If that's something that's important to you, there is something to be responsible for. And it doesn't mean taking responsibility for other people's work, because we all need to take self-responsibility, but it does mean knowing when to refer somebody out, or it does mean knowing when to recommend a different modality, treatment, session, different practitioner, because maybe I've reached the maximum of what I can support them with, or my skill sets no longer line up with the things that they need support in. And having the humility and also boiling things down to simple is the question is, what is best for this patient? What is best for this client? What is best for this human at this moment based on the things that I'm observing and seeing? I don't get it right all the time, but I do trust my intuition and my instincts, and more as time goes by. And again, that's a developing edge for me as well. And the more I trust that, the more confidence I get in my own intuition, the more confidence I get in my own guidance for myself, but also for other people that I'm being of service to, because there might be somebody that they need to see. Maybe I've taken them as far as they can go with the information that I'm sharing, or the energy that I'm bringing, or knowing when we need to take a pause, knowing when we need to take a little bit of a break so that they can actually integrate all the things that we've worked on. And that's something I'm actually learning in my own experience more all the time as a 5-1 manifester by human design standards anyway. I tend to have quite a bit of activating energy and initiating type energy that can really create a big spark and a big wave in people's systems, both from a health and wellness point of view, but relational dynamics, work, purpose, mission, all of those things, they get illuminated quite quickly. And then there's actually a lot of work to do to integrate that and unpack that. And I help them with that as well. And at some point, we need to actually dial down the activation and the initiation so that things can land deeper in the body and deepen in their nervous system. And this is where I often recommend somatic therapy. This is where I recommend play therapy. And I'm just going to say nature therapy, which for all of us is just get your ass in nature. Get by some water, get by a river, get by the stream, get by the ocean, go interact with some giant old growth forests if you can. Let that biodiversity of nature populate your own system, because that's often what leads to disconnect, is if we're not getting that. If we are experiencing a deficiency of nature in our lives, in our bodies, we are nature. That means we're going to experience a deficiency of ourselves. So when you get into the forest, when you have a swim in a beautiful mountain lake, it helps you reconnect and find yourself again. Bring you to your own self, to your own nature. And when you're in tune and aligned with your own nature, illnesses tend to drop away. Symptoms tend to drop away because the body often will say, they're listening. Okay, I got their attention. They're changing things. They're addressing things. Now we can start moving that energy rather than making our bodies or forcing our bodies to hold all of this energy and emotion, possibly from years and years and years, childhood, ancestral, soul level, all of those things. So right now, what I'm seeing most people are needing is not surface level treatment. They don't need just a treatment. They need deep, nurturing and nourishing types of treatment that land all the way to their bones, that go into the ancestral patterns, that go into the inner child wounding, shadows, traumas, all of those things, because the body will no longer tolerate these aspects going unknown or unaddressed is maybe the word I was looking for. So if you're waiting in your life for something to shift, for miraculous healing to happen, that could happen. But what if you took an empowered step and mustered the courage to address the things that are deeply held within your body, even if you don't know what they are, and just taking a deep breath right now, if you're with me, that you can face the things that you're most afraid of, that you can face the things in life that you are feeling really challenged by, that scare you, that you feel really maybe shy to bring forward, to voice your needs. And one of those aspects is to even ask yourself, what do I need? What do I want? And to give yourself permission to actually go into the depths, because this is what I ask my patients when they're sitting in front of me. What do you think you need? What do you think this is about? And they will often have an idea, and sometimes they'll say, I don't know. And whenever they say, I don't know, that alerts me to the fact that maybe they're not ready to know yet, because there's a part of them that does know. There's a part of them that does know exactly what is going on and know exactly what needs to be addressed and what needs to be shifted or changed. But maybe they don't have enough support yet. Maybe they don't have a solid community or solid friendships that they can lean into through a big change. And so I'll ask them about that. What is your support structure like? Who's on your team right now? Who is an ally, whether it's practitioners or friends or family, that can support you through a change and hold space for you to actually become somebody new? Because your body is saying it's time to become a new being. But the mind can tell us all kinds of things, of all the millions of reasons to not do that. And fear is one of them. Fear of the unknown, fear of change. I don't believe we've ever been in a bigger time of change on this planet. So of course that would be happening inside our bodies, inside our cells, inside the DNA. So let's ride that wave together in a really free, empowered way inside. And suddenly things will start melting and shifting out of your life that don't serve you anymore. Just naturally, because you're choosing to take a step forward. You're choosing to live in an empowered way where you're not letting fear dictate your decisions every day, where you're letting your heart shine through and radiate to the point where it starts affecting your decisions of who you hang out with. And maybe the people that you have been hanging out with, if you're shifting to a higher frequency and that's uncomfortable for them, it'll actually oscillate in their systems and create a frequency shift for them. And they can choose to elevate as well, or they may choose to kind of stay and hang on to where they're at. And in that case, sometimes we do need to let friendships go, or we need to let acquaintances go, or people that we resonated with in the past, maybe we no longer resonate for. And I think I've been on both sides of that equation. And the continuous, ever evolving way that we relate and connect with other human beings, super, super powerful. And so I tend to have people close to me that are also interested in growth, in their own evolution, are willing to have hard conversations, are willing to speak openly and honestly, and still maintain kindness for one another, to still maintain care and compassion for one another, and to call each other out in a beautiful, loving way. Because I've also seen this masquerade sometimes as, well, I'm saying the truth, but kindness and compassion has been completely forgotten. And wherever possible, if we can deliver things with truth and with kindness, with authenticity, the way that's going to be received, even if it's uncomfortable for the other person, which then sometimes we feel uncomfortable with, this is a practice. We can get better being in uncomfortable conversations. So at the end of the day, one of the biggest things that I've seen that can take away from somebody's health is when they're avoiding uncomfortable conversations, or when they've been avoiding any discomfort inside themselves. And that could be, again, facing the truth, facing something that they know they need to shift and just bypassing and avoiding. And then that's usually where, we see addictions or different behaviors come up to bypass and override what's actually being felt or what's actually trying to be felt, because the body needs to express it. Like I said, it can't hang on to it forever. So that energy has to go somewhere. And if we're not taking our self-directed inspiration, what am I trying to say here? A self-directed direction of coming from a place of freedom inside, if we're stifling that inherent impulse and that innate response that we have, then usually we'll create backwards flowing chi in our bodies or in our lives, and stuff starts happening. So take a deep breath, maybe take notes and make a list. And this can actually be uncomfortable too, but write down, what are the uncomfortable conversations that you're not having? And start at the top. And maybe if you get a list of 2 or 3, and for some of you, there's going to be a pretty big list there, that can feel overwhelming. Just breathe through it. You don't have to do anything with this list. I think even just having eyes and writing down this idea and writing down, taking an inventory of maybe the relational dynamics of what you're currently experiencing, you're also going to know that this is holding so much life force and energy for you right now. And it's time to liberate that. Don't wait too long. Don't wait 10, 20, 30 years or wait to the end of your life to have those types of conversations. Many of those conversations are actually going to be way more loving than what you imagine, especially if you show up in a curious and loving, open-hearted way, the best that you can, and deliver and share the things and ask the questions that maybe you've been wondering for a while. And remember that you're staring into the eyes of another human being who has thoughts and feelings and woundings and traumas just like you. And if we can see the inner child in each other, then we'll tread a little bit more lightly. Then we will be more easily carrying compassion for one another if we can connect with ourselves. So I invite you, before you have some of these conversations, get grounded, get clear, move your body, be in nature so that you can become the most connected version of you, so that when you enter in a conversation like this, you're grounded, you're deeply connected, you're in as much alignment as possible. That affects the energy of these conversations in a big way, and it can allow the other person to attune to your clarity and to attune to your heart and your intention of why are you there. And if you're there to repair and help resolve both of your hearts and your minds as good as you can, even though you can't act for the other person, you can only act from who you are, then that's enough. And as you go through this list that maybe you've identified, it is going to free up so much energy in your life. And I can bet you that whatever symptoms and illnesses you may or may not be carrying right now start to resolve and dissolve, because you're honoring what's needed by your body. You're honoring what's needed by your nervous system. Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.